split right in the middle of restaurant.
One shot in juvenile.
The officers were involved in this terrible crash. Rescue showed up on scene. This is what's going to happen.
No greater sensation than taking on Mother Nature herself. It's kind of a metaphor of life to me. The water is green and pure. It reminds me of innocence. And then you start going down the rivers and they start getting muddied, and it reminds me of life as you get layers and layers of experience and problems. And then when you go through the rapids, you start spinning in all directions. You don't know if you're going east, west, north, or south. You get lost. Then it spits you out, and you're okay. Then it starts all over again.
Take all the wings of the earth, of the air, away, nothing could survive. If you take all the four-leggeds away, nothing could survive. If you take all our green relatives away, everything that grows, if you take that away, nothing could survive. But if you take the human being away, everything would flourish. So we are the lowest form of life.
When I look at the Grand Canyon, I actually think it might be the world's largest living cathedral.
There's a perspective that each of us has, so if you come up against a hardship, it could be extremely negative. Like going down the Colorado River is the most terrifying thing, or it could be the most wonderful, beautiful thing. And you just take it and accept it, make it part of your life, and allow it to transform you in a positive.
So far this trip is I didn't know that we might be witnessing the first person ever to try to stand up paddle down the Grand Canyon. Archie Coletta, head lifeguard of Maui, true Hawaiian warrior, is now taken on the Grand Canyon and speaking to its gods. Never stop learning, explore.
You want to learn about Hopi, Zuni, you want to survive, then we take control of our children. We don't allow them into kindergarten. We don't allow them into first grade. We don't allow them anywhere except in our families and our kivas and our tioshpais and everything that is sacred and holy and good. We have to be free to do that. And that's the essence of life for all human beings, is you have to be free. If you're not free, you're going to lose everything. And you end up studying it instead of living it. I cannot stand watching my people die. And they're dying because they're not free.
What colonization and assimilation means is to strip the Indian of his identity, strip the Indian of his core beliefs and the way that they've lived for, hundreds, thousands of years, and create a new Indian in the image of that culture.
Colonization is a lot of facets. I heard this one guy say one time that, the root of the word colonization? The root of the word colonization is the same root as the word colon. Means to digest. It's the digestion of one culture by another. And it's religious, it's economic, it's military, it's education, it's paradigm. It's control. It's about control.
Once we speak English, once we're able to have a different mentality, then that basic policy has basically come into fruition. So
our roles are missing. What do we do when we don't have a job or we don't know our place? This patriarchal system that the U.S. government is really based on has been imposed upon our people, and it's really displaced our roles.
You said that your grandmother is considered like the second Geronimo or something? What did you mean by that?
Of this generation.
Well, how so? What is her name? And I didn't know this. So what?
Roberta Blackgoat from the Black Mesa area, where she passed on a few years back. Many people consider her the grandmother of the resistance. We have a matriarchy, and for our people, our leaders are women. And from the time of the Relocation Act of 1974, the Black Mesa area, when 14,000 of our people were relocated, she stayed. She said, the only one that can remove me is the Creator. And from that time on, she's inspired so many people.
My roots is way down deep. It can't be pulled out. My great-great-grandmother is buried there, and grandmother and my mother, my father and brothers, and even my children, they're just buried just among where I am. I'm just going to remain.
That was the beauty of it, just trying to maintain our simple, beautiful way of life, being on the land. Roberta Blackgoat.
Roberta Blackgoat.
Oh, sorry. I'm a little nervous. I've never done this in front of so many ladies in my life. This is not a...
My grandma can do it better. She's 90.
Grandma can do it better.
Question. What is a reservation?
Reserved.
Reserved.
A very important construct because people think land that was given to Indians as land reserved under treaty. In our case, some places it's a little bit worse off, but...
So they round up everyone and say this is where you're going to live now?
No, it depends on the community, but a lot of time, they spend a lot of time trying to kill the Indians.
Right.
And then they say, well, you know what, maybe we won't kill them, we'll just isolate them, and we'll leave them there, and then we'll just steal everything else, And so then, because first they started, forcing people they put 97 Indian nations in Oklahoma for the eastern seaboard, and some of those people walk back, walk home. Like in our area, some people the Ho-Chunks walk home from Oklahoma, walk back. So that's how it's started. Like that was because they moved from killing to isolation, and then they moved to kind of killing on the reservation.
And Charlie, one thing I want to mention is that all land or Indian territory reservations, those were lands that were deemed useless, desolate, and not rich in minerals or anything to the federal government. They thought they couldn't extract anything out of those lands, therefore they put the Indians there. And nowadays, they're finding coal all over the Navajo reservation.
My grandmother would always say that the coal is the liver of the earth. And all of these elements, the river here, this is the lifeblood, this is the veins, it feeds everything. When you see that for what it is, and you respect it, because it provides so much for us. It's our life. We can't live without water. We can't live without a natural, healthy, functioning ecosystem. So when you take out the coal, what happens if we take out part of your liver, or we start removing organs and mining these things, you know, our bodies start to shut down and we have difficulty.
The Black Mesa Water Coalition was started really as a reactionary need to get out and stop power plant proposals, stop the Black Mesa mine that was taking our coal, the liver of our mother, but also the water, our sole source of drinking water, to provide energy to Los Angeles. We're not only protesting and marching, but we're also trying to do movement building and getting more young people involved. We just got past the first ever Indigenous green jobs policy in our tribal government. It will create thousands of green jobs, put food on the table for our families, and give us an option outside of coal mining for our people.
Glen Canyon Dam is a hydroelectric dam that provides electricity to major cities around the Southwest, including Page, Flagstaff, Phoenix. But yet, about 80% of people on the Navajo reservation do not have electricity, do not have running water. All these big cities have boomed because of water. You go on the Navajo reservation, the Hopi reservation right there, the Paiute, the Wallapai, the Havasupai. We are still without electricity and wanting running water. Our water rights are going off the reservation. So, excuse me. So my grandmother has to go 50 miles for water, and we have to haul it for her. And from a water source where she has to put in a quarter. This is a common story on the reservation, not just the Navajo. So this is a story that we must remember about this water right here. It's valuable, it's gold. It's gold to people. To us natives, it's life.
I had no intention of paddling down this river the whole way. But I kind of got motivated after listening to Nikki when she was crying and she was talking about grandma still has to go get water by bucket. I could not fathom that. I was like, this is America. There's no way that's supposed to be happening. I don't know if that's how the Indian people want to live, but I think we have to help improve the standards before we go out and help everybody else around the world. You got to take care of your own first. I hope that that'll happen, so that grandmas and grandpas and little ones don't have to go down to the river and fill up a bucket. I mean, can you imagine that? I cannot. Not in America. That's not right. There's a whole spiritual sense about this river. It's alive. And I don't mean what's under the water. I mean the water. The water is alive.
People would think this would be a brutal environment to live in. You talk about your feet drying and cracking and you're getting yourself sunburned and having to keep yourself hydrated, things like that. But imagine having many generations of families and watching the seasons come and go. I don't think it was brutal to them at all. I think that this is an oasis.
see so many figures in the rocks, faces, eyes, noses. Life itself is just carved in. There's so much wisdom in these walls.
Where you live, that's where the earth is born. And here she's very old. But there's very few places in the world you can see the earth being born.
Yeah.
Over there.
You know, this is the old land, and we have the new land, and you know, it's so much alive. You listen what you hear. This place is alive.
Is there any symbolism to thunder?
We're gonna be blessed pretty soon.
Language is part of the identity. The place is part of the identity. The places I refer to in songs or prayers is my identity.
Navajo is my first language. I went to kindergarten, first day, I refused to speak English. I didn't want to learn. I didn't, you know, it was new to me. And they tried the second day, and then they brought my mom in. They told her, you know, she can't come back until she cooperates.
Kicked out, but...
And then so they kicked me out of school until further notice.
Indian children have to be put in boarding school at the age of 7 and up to the age of 16, I believe. And so parents were actually told, if you don't put your children in school, you'll be taken to prison. So they had to take their child to school. And the parents didn't know English. They were just told, okay, this is what will be, put your name here, name them here. And that's how you were integrated into the boarding school. Laughter, humor was a way to cope with the trauma of being isolated from your home, from the bosom of your mom. And one of the saddest things that I recall, at night you'd hear children sniffling, crying. That's real touching. So those are the sad things I remember.
Sometimes I feel guilty because I'm not fluent in my language, but I also recognize that so much of that is because of this history of colonization that, you know, sometimes I feel real bad that I don't speak fluently. It's a sign of the history. Some of those things don't get passed down because of those things that we have to survive.
Our fluency in our language is almost now extinct. Without our language, we cease to be who we are. We cease to be Lakota. We cease to be American Indian.
From a cultural aspect, I've known for many years that the issues between the Hawaiians and the Native Indians are the same, and actually they've been fighting it for a lot longer than we have. So we've learned a lot from the Indian people. You know, it just gives me chicken skin to meet somebody like Larry, and you know, he's a walking encyclopedia. He has so much knowledge. You know, in my homeland, we call people like that, we call them our kapunas, our elders. You know, I just want to thank people like Larry for allowing me to enjoy the beauty of this place, because that's what it's really all about. When you do come to a place like this, you treat it with respect. And you know, even like the ceremonies that we had, like the offerings in the morning, we're the same, because we do the same thing back home.
Every time we pick a plant for human consumption, it is in all of our cultures to make an offering and to say thank you for letting us pick you. And we have to be careful about how we pick. We just can't bunch it up and pull it out. That's rude. That's very disrespectful. We have to pick it in a certain place and pray for it in a different place.
Hawaii, the same thing. Hawaii, it's the exact same thing. When they have the hula ceremonies, they go into the mountains and they pick the flowers. We make an offering before we even start picking.
You know, it's just really strange that we come from almost two different worlds, but we live
Very similar philosophies.
the land, the water, the sky. Those are our gods. You practice your culture every day. What you do, like me, being in the water, this is me. I'm practicing my culture because I belong in the water. You know, that's where I come from. In our own little way, we gotta practice our culture because in return, that strengthens us as a people.
Like a pool.
It does.
It's unbelievable.
It's just iridescent blue-green up there, all the falls